Hello, fellow resistors. Charlie Angus here, the Meidas Canada Network. We're going to talk about the indictment brought down against James Comey under Trump's directions to charge the former FBI director. This is the I Told You So episode. Now, if you've been following the work I've been doing, if you've been reading my Resistance Substack and participating in what we've been doing with Meidas, you're not surprised at this indictment. But for all those others who said Trump was just being Trump, or it was going to settle down, or there were guardrails in place, what you're seeing now is the fascist playbook in action. You know, it took, 2 months before people started getting kidnapped off the streets and disappeared into the ICE detention centers. It took them just over 4 months to create the first of the concentration camps. We did learn last week, although it got very little attention because everyone was talking about the new MAGA Jesus, Charlie Kirk, that 1,200 people at Alligator Alcatraz have just disappeared. They're not sure where they are, and the government's not saying. That's what happens in fascist authoritarian states. And now it's taken just over 8 months for Trump to start going after his political enemies with the vendetta and using the courts. You know, this summer I spoke with a really powerful Democratic congresswoman who was expressing her frustration that the big honchos in the Democratic Party thought that they could just wait Trump out, that the best strategy was to do nothing, let Trump just implode. You know, if anybody studied the fascist playbook knows that those who sit on the sidelines while the cages are being built are going to end up in the cages themselves. Now, before we get to that, I want to just again do some shout outs to the incredible responses we've been getting from all over the world, because this is about a movement of resistance. This isn't just a bad news report. This is how we resist the bad news. So I've got some great messages here. This one's from Vic Stevenson. He says, as an American, in the world today, it is no longer Democrats versus Republicans, conservative versus liberals, or whatever the parties are. It's democracy versus fascism. Wake up and pick a side. There is no saddling the fence at this fight. No middle of the road. You are either for democracy or not. Pick an effing side. Thanks, Vic. You're pretty much singing from our hymn book here. Here's another one from Carolyn Carlson, also from the U.S. Anyone who thinks Canadians are a pushover have never seen a hockey game. I'm grateful for our neighbors being a steady light in this rough patch. Thanks so much for that. In response to my pieces on Pete Hoekstra, oh God, Pete, you continue to piss people off. You are gaslighting your way across this nation. We're going to have a little talk. I think we're going to do a bit of a discussion with the Meidas family, the Meidas Mighty, as to whether or not we should give Pete another chance or we should help pack his bags. But we'll get to that on another episode. But this one is from Joyce, and she said, I want to thank you for mentioning the Regina Rifles. So yes, when I was in Regina and I was talking about our long history of democracy, I mentioned the fabled Farmer Johns of the Regina Rifles. And she said, my dad lied about his age to join the Regina Rifles. He was one of the Saskatchewan farm boys who landed on Juno Beach on D-Day. He was wounded in Germany while fighting in Europe. For all his life, he was proud to have served his country in fighting fascism. Thank you for your sacrifice, Corporal Robert George McDonald. Yes, thank you for that. And my wife had 2 young prairie boy uncles who served in the Regina Rifles, and one of them lies in a field in Belgium. So we remember. Here's a great one from Denmark. We're getting great commentary from our friends, the Vikings, the Danes. As a Dane, I can say an attack on Canadian values, Canada's integrity, Canada's independence is an attack on Denmark, Greenland, and the Faroe Islands too, aka the Kingdom of Denmark. MAGA has to remember that Canada is put very high regards here. Canada is our brothers and sisters who did not move to another part of the world, but who never forgot where they came from and never forgot what is right and wrong, who had our backs when we needed it the most. Not just joining the World War when the tide was already starting to turn. Without Canadian paratroopers cutting off the Soviets so that the British could get to Denmark first, Denmark would have come under Soviet rules. For that, I'm forever thankful. Thankful to the Canadians in the UK. Thank you for Churchill for not trusting the Soviets to keep their word and their end of the bargain. Canadians didn't either. Elbows up, Canada. Don't ever kiss the gangster's ring. And of course, no, we are not going to kiss the gangster's ring. Here's a great one. We've been getting some poems. This is from Max. He said, the right have been saying we are Charlie Kirk, but this American says we cannot let them hijack the name Charlie. Damn right. Damn right. I agree. Totally, Max. They are the anti-Charlie. And just like they are the Antichrist, if you believe. I don't know if you've seen this chat, but if you will see this chat, yes, I have seen this, Max. Thanks for sending it. But I wrote this little poem, and I hope you like it. There are millions of Americans like myself who hate these fascists. We hate Hoekstra. We must be on our diplomats, which is why I'm here. He writes, just like there is the Christ and the Antichrist, there is the Charlie and the anti-Charlie. The Charlie is Charlie Angus, and he stands for freedom, human rights, and peace. The anti-Charlie was Charlie Kirk. One calls for cessation of genocide and starvation. The other said gun deaths are necessary. One supports good people of all colors, nationalities, and religions. The other one wouldn't trust a pilot based on his skin color. One supports equal rights for women. The other one thinks women should submit to their husbands. One welcomes immigrants and diversity. The other thinks they are replacing his people and should be deported. One stands for peace and would never hate someone for simply disagreeing, unless they are fascist. That's true. The other is being used to demonize opponents as enemies because they want equality. TPUSA began in 2012. The real Charlie began long before that. We are all Charlie. MAGA and Trump support the anti-Charlie, just like they support the Antichrist. Well, Max, thanks for that. I'm very touched. Okay, so let's get into today's discussion. Okay, so where are we at in terms of the fascist playbook? Well, we have the President of the United States announcing who his political enemies are in order of the list that he wants them dealt with, and he expects that Justice Department officials will do his bidding. There is no democracy, even the most tainted democracy in the world, where a leader can name their enemies and then justice officials will follow through and do their bidding, except now in Trump land. This is where we are in the fascist playbook. Now, just recently, Trump fired the U.S. Attorney for the Eastern District of Virginia, Eric Siebert, for refusing to follow through on these witch hunts. But of course, he's put in place Pam Bondi, who's now delivered his public enemy number one, James Comey, former director of the FBI. We're going to get to that in a minute. But I think to understand how much American democracy has been degraded by the thug in chief in Washington, we need to go back and just do a little history of Trump's long association with Russia, with dirty Russian money, with Vladimir Putin, and the role they played in creating the myth of Donald Trump, the man, the art of the deal, and how they basically created the myth of Donald Trump, the president, and helped get him elected. So it begins in the late 1980s. The Soviets started to pay attention to Trump. They started to transfer money into Trump real estate holdings. So these are the days of the KGB. The KGB were notorious for their ability to launder money, and they were always looking for good chumps and good locations, and Donald Trump, voila. They invited Trump over to Moscow in 1987, treated him like he was somebody big and important. That's where all the rumors are about the hotel where the KGB were spying on him. Who knows what they got? I don't know. I'm not going to go there. But what is clear is that by the early into mid-1990s, after the Soviet Union fell and the kleptocracy of oligarchs stealing public assets began like a wildfire across Russia, Trump's real estate holdings became a prime place to dump this dirty Russian money. So much so that they say by the late 1990s, a third of the Trump real estate was owned by Russian money, that they were involved in setting up numbered companies to buy into Trump real estate all over the U.S. Now check this out, though. In the early 1990s, the police, the FBI, were trying to find a notorious Russian hitman. Well, he was staying at Trump Towers. In 2013, the FBI broke up a massive two gambling rings in Trump Towers, and the leader of the gambling ring was also running a money laundering scheme, and he lived in the apartment right below Donald Trump. His name was Alamzan Tukhanov, and when the FBI were trying to find out where he was, well, he was over at the Miss Universe contest that was supposed to be run by Donald Trump, and he was just sitting a few seats away from Trump. So if the FBI had wanted to find this dirty money launderer, well, what they should have done was just simply followed Donald Trump, because that's where the cat was. Now, here's an important thing, that when the FBI went after these gamblers and money launderers, as soon as Trump became president, he went after the FBI leader of that investigation and had him fired. So there you go. That's smoking gun number one. One of the other main characters involved at that time in the real estate shenanigans was Felix Sater, who was later convicted of stock fraud for being involved with the Russian mafia. And he had this scheme to build this massive Trump Tower in Moscow that would make Trump look like a great deal maker, and he promised to get Vladimir Putin involved. And the selling point that Felix said was that we can get this guy elected president. So Trump, the myth of Trump as the great successful tycoon, is total bogus. What happened was that none of the banks would touch him. He owed $4 billion to 7 different banks, so he began relying on Russian oligarch money that was laundered. When Trump was needing money, they invited him over in 2013 for the Miss Universe competition. They paid him $20 million, even though they did all the work. They were going to build the Soho Tower, Trump Tower. They paid him 18% commission, but they did all the work. So why are they being so nice to this guy? Russians aren't just giving money out willy-nilly. They see Trump as the perfect mark, and he follows through. When he's at Miss Universe, he's tweeting, hoping Vladimir Putin will come. He says, will Vladimir Putin become my best friend? They had this guy clocked from the get-go. So much so that former Republican leader of the House, Kevin McCarthy, stated that he thought that Trump was an unwitting paid agent of the Russian state. Okay, so fast forward to the election. Now, we know in 2016, the Russians hacked the Democratic committee. They started to release emails on Hillary Clinton to make her look bad, but they were also hacking into all kinds of Democratic regional offices. They were doing major interference. The Internet Research Agency of Moscow, which was their main troll farm, had thousands and thousands of fake accounts, millions of messages going out, all trying to create chaos in the U.S. electoral system. We're going to talk about that probably at another time, but I just want to give you a bit of the rogues gallery of the key guys who backed Trump in his 2016 bid, and it shows, it reads like something out of a FBI dossier. So his campaign manager, Paul Manafort, the guy was the chief advisor to Viktor Yanukovych, who was the Putin puppet in Ukraine. After Yanukovych used snipers and military against the unarmed people in the Maidan uprising, the Ukrainians forced him out. So then Manafort went to work for the oligarchs. He worked for a pro-Russia party in Ukraine at the time, while Ukraine was under attack from Russia in Crimea. Then he suddenly leaves that and comes over and takes over as Trump's campaign manager. You have his key foreign policy advisors, Carter Page, George Papadopoulos, both who were involved in talking with the Russians. Carter Page went over to Russia, came back after meeting with the Russians. They were writing much more pro-Putin policies for the Republican Party while doing that. There's Jared Kushner, of course, the son-in-law, who helped set up the meeting in Trump Towers with Russian operatives who were offering information on Hillary Clinton. So this is a campaign that is directly engaged with a foreign power to take down their political opponents. And then we get to Michael Flynn. Now, what the hell can you say about Michael Flynn? This guy is so off the charts. He had apparently got in a relationship with a Russian woman, mysterious Russian woman, and he signed off his messages as General Misha. When he was appointed on Trump's staff, he lied about his meetings with the Russian ambassador, and then Attorney General Sally Yates told Trump, this guy is bad news. He's going to compromise you and the Russians can blackmail him. So what did Trump do? He fired Sally Yates. So there's the second smoking gun. Trump fires the Attorney General who's trying to protect the United States and protect Trump from a guy who's deeply involved in talking with the Russians. So then Trump goes to James Comey, the FBI director, and tells him, hey, out of loyalty, and he used the word loyalty, I want you to back off investigating Michael Flynn. And James Comey did not do that because James Comey had his job of putting law above political patronage. And also, he had his job of protecting the United States from foreign interference. So Trump fired Comey. So since then, Trump has gone out of his way to go the Russia hoax. Far-right influencers who are all supporting Vladimir Putin have denounced anyone who's spoken up again about the total connections between Russia and Donald Trump. So now Trump is going after James Comey. He just recently said he wanted to go after Barack Obama, who was the president who launched the investigations into whether or not Russia was undermining and attacking American infrastructure in the American elections. So this is a man right now who believes he has the power to go after anyone who stands in his way. If this is not challenged, if this is not stopped, then we go to the next part of the fascist playbook, which is going to get a lot more frightening. My hope is that this overreach on James Comey will be a wake-up call. Wake up the Democrats, wake up the legal system, wake up anyone in power in the United States. But what is awake right now are the ordinary people, the people across the world who are defending democracy. So we've got to work together, folks, at this time. We've got to keep kicking at that darkness till it bleeds daylight. We've got to share the information so people understand. You know, if you're not following the news, and who can follow the news any day when we're just being bombarded with kind of online crap, you need to be able to see those connections, the connections that exist clearly between the money, the influence, the interference, the dirty connections between Putin's vision for the world, Donald Trump's vision for the world, the age of gangsters, and the age of gangsters is always tied to dirty money. And we're going to continue to expose that. We're going to continue to talk about it, and we're going to continue to give people options and ideas for how to resist. So thanks for that. I need you to subscribe. Hit subscribe. Support Meidas Canada. Help us get to 200,000 subscribers. Follow me on Charlie Angus Resistance Substack. And if you want to help our work, because we're trying to get out, taking this on the road, you can contact info@charlieangus.ca, and we can talk about how to make a contribution to the work we're doing. So thanks, my friends. Stay strong. Merci. Miigwech.